All right, so this is the Colonial Park Cemetery. Cemetery hours are 8 to 5. I have a feeling we're gonna get locked in here. Yikes. We're just here cutting through the cemetery. There's a lot of people in here taking pictures of the tombstones and everything. I kind of want to go check some of them out too. Oh wow, I can't even read them, they're so old. I can't even read them. All the words are worn off. Wow, these things are so old. I can't even read the words. This one says James, I don't know what that says, something dumps. Wow, it's crazy. Let's try these white ones. These might have, there's marble. Marble's a little more expensive. Hopefully it lasted over the years. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe. It's like you can't even read nothing. This one you can read. 1845, this one passed away. 175 years ago. Margaret Springer. Wow. Alright, let's see what this one says. Sacred to the memory of Julia Foster, youngest daughter of George somebody. It's hard to read. It's in the memory of 1836. I don't know what in the world this is. It's like, are there bodies inside these things? I have no idea. Interesting. Very interesting. This one here, there's somebody here. Can't read what it says, but it's from somebody who departed this life November 6th, 1817. Alexa, the person who's buried here was only 9 years old. I don't know if she's impressed, terrified, or just tired. Just an interesting place. It's always interesting walking around old cemeteries. It's like you wonder, you feel the history, you feel the spirit of people. They're always kind of solemn places. But it always just makes you think, you know, none of us are immortal. None of us are gonna live forever. Eventually our time's gonna come, every single one of us. And it just makes you wonder, you know, like the people who are connected to the cemetery, are their families still here? Do they still live in Savannah, Georgia? Do they still live in the United States? Like this one here, this is a big one here. This was James Johnston, who was Georgia's first newspaper publisher and printer. It says, here repose the remains of James Johnston, died in 1808. So this guy's been passed away for 212 years. 212 years. Editor of Georgia's first newspaper. He was a native of Scotland. Johnston settled in Savannah in the year 1761. Wow. Wow. Before the United States even fought their revolution. He recommended as a person regularly bred to and well skilled in the art of and mystery of printing. Mystery of printing. Printing is something that's come at that time. It was a new thing, especially with printing presses coming and all that kind of stuff. Newspapers were just coming out to now today's day and age where hardly anybody even picks up a newspaper anymore. Everybody pretty much just, everything's digital and online. You know, I still see people occasionally reading a newspaper, but think about it. How many people you used to see reading a newspaper, like on the bus or on the train or just walking around your average city, to how many you see today? Almost everybody's got their heads buried in their phone. It's crazy. I'm being told there's some sort of squirrel over here. Oh yeah, he's like a white squirrel. Going up the side of that tree right there. Interesting. His fur is really light. This one says Duelist Grave. And it's a little hard to see with the sunlight here. It says the epitaph to James Wilde on the nearby tomb is a melancholy reminder of the days of dueling, and particularly of a tragic affair of honor fought January 16, 1815 on the Carolina side of the river near Savannah. Lieutenant Wilde was shot through the heart in a fourth exchange of fire by Captain Roswell P. Johnson, as a man who was short time before would have been friendless but for him. Wow. Just crazy. People settle in their battles with duels. Now everybody picks their battles on Twitter and Facebook and attacks people they don't even know. Obviously a duel is somebody's gonna end up dead, but this Twitter stuff is just ridiculous too. All this hatred people spread online. It's like, can't people just get along with everybody? It's ridiculous. Anyway, interesting story. This one here is William Scarborough. He was the promoter of the first transoceanic steamship. He was moving forward. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but there's the sound of a boat passing through the Savannah River a couple blocks from here. As soon as I mentioned that, was that truly a boat passing through the river, or was that William Scarborough letting us know that he knows we're here? It says William Scarborough was the moving force among enterprising businessmen of Savannah. In 1819, sent the first steamship across the Atlantic Ocean. So he definitely had some history. So any of you who are cruise buffs, like to take cruises, especially transatlantic cruises, William Scarborough, he was a pioneer getting that first transoceanic steamship. This one here is really hard to read because of the light. I apologize. It's Joseph Valence Bevan from 1798 to 1830. He was Georgia's first official historian. So any old Georgia history that dates back to the late 1700s, early 1800s, Joseph Bevan was your guy to thank for keeping that history alive. Savannah is such a beautiful historic place. All right, this one here says this memorial is for Button Gwinnett. He died in 1777, Georgia signer of the Declaration of Independence, president of Georgia, whose remains are buried in this cemetery. Wow. Somebody who signed the Declaration of Independence here for the state of Georgia. And there's their memorial tomb right here. Very interesting. Let's see, we got a couple more signs to read. We got about 4 more signs to read, at least in this section. And I think we're going to take off because it's starting to get dark out here. Alright, so this one here is Major John Barion. It says in 1775, John Barion of New Jersey came to the province of Georgia where one of his mother's kin had previously settled. His father, John Barion, was a judge of the Supreme Court of New Jersey and a trustee of Princeton College. Wow. From the Barion home at Rock Hill, New Jersey, General Washington issued his farewell address to the Army in 1783. Wow, this guy has some connections to some important history here. At the age of 17, John Barion was commissioned second lieutenant in the 1st Georgia Continental Brigade. A few months later, he was promoted to first lieutenant, and the following year, he was commissioned captain. Wow, talk about a quick mover. A firm supporter of the General McIntosh and the troubles that befell the officer after his slaying of Button Gwinnett in a duel. Button Gwinnett we just talked about. Barion followed McIntosh to Washington's headquarters and served as a brigade major of North Carolina's troops at Valley Forge. Wow. After the Revolution, he returned to Georgia with his family, which included his young son, John McPherson Barion, who was destined to become one of Georgia's most illustrious statesmen. Wow. Interesting. That guy had some connections to Washington, Valley Forge. A lot of people don't like walking around cemeteries. They're cool, because especially one like this where it gives you history. This one says, Joseph Clay Patriot, who was a patriot. Native of Yorkshire, Joseph Clay settled at the Savannah at the age of 19. His uncle, James Habersham, which is a very famous road here in Savannah, declared that the industry was highly commendable and his abilities for trade unquestionable. Fulfilling his early promise, he prospered in Georgia as a merchant and a rice planter. It says, here rests James Habersham, associate of George Whitefield and a leading merchant, planter, and public servant during Georgia's colonial era. Mr. Habersham came to the colony in 1738 as a youthful follower of Reverend Whitefield and collaborated with that eminent divine in the founding of the Bethesda Orphanage. Wow, interesting. And then here is Joseph, John, and James Jr. Habersham. It says the 3 Habersham brothers who here rest beside their distinguished father were prominent patriots in the American Revolution and outstanding public men during the early years of the Republic. Sons of one, Joseph was a ardent son of liberty and a member of the Council of Safety. John was a major in the Georgia Continental Regiment, and James Habersham Jr. was a merchant actively opposed to the Revenue Acts of Parliament in 1775. So all these guys were involved in stuff that led up to the Revolutionary War. People think that when they think of the Revolutionary War in American history, most people tend to think of Boston as the first city, which Boston is a place where a lot of stuff happened, but there was stuff happening all over in all the colonies because people were fed up with everything that was going on. This is Nathaniel Greene, who we saw his square earlier in a different video. And John Maitland, wonder if it's connected to Maitland, Florida, says this tomb is known as the Graham Vault. 2 heroes of the Revolutionary War, and 1 American and the other one who was British. It says in this cemetery, many victims of the Great Yellow Fever epidemic of 1820 were buried. Nearly 700 Savannahans died that year, including 2 local physicians who lost their lives caring for the stricken. Several epidemics followed. In 1854, the Savannah Benevolent Association was organized to aid the families of the fever victims. With everything we're going through in today's age with coronavirus and COVID-19, you look back at the Great Yellow Fever epidemic of 1820, and now here we are in 2020 dealing with the COVID pandemic. Just brings things into kind of perspective here, doesn't it?
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please don't forget to help us out by subscribing and hitting that like button. As always, we look forward to your comments, and if you'd like to stay up to date with all our new videos, please click the notification bell. Thanks, see you soon!